Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm actually coming to you this week from Maryland because our family is on vacation. We are out here exploring all the sites of DC and surrounding areas, and honestly, it has been an amazing week. So my cup is full. But that being said, I'm not gonna make you guys, wait and leave you guys hanging for another video. So I'm gonna do this video right here from our Airbnb in Maryland. And today's topic is actually going to be the topic of Wyoming versus Montana. Now, I get asked all the time how Wyoming compares to states like Idaho and Montana, and I've already done a video on how Wyoming compares to Idaho, but I hadn't yet done a video on how Wyoming compares to Montana. So I thought, well, golly gee, what better time to do that than now? I had plenty of time researching this while traveling, and so here I am to share it with you all. So I'm gonna go ahead and start in terms of scenery. So in terms of scenery, when it comes to Wyoming versus Montana, our scenery is going to be very, very similar. We still have a lot of prairie land. We still have big, beautiful mountains, plenty of outdoor recreation, tight-knit communities, and those big, beautiful skies. So in terms of the outdoor scenery, probably you're not going to notice much of a difference. Where things do start to splinter though, really are in terms of our cost of living and our economics, really honestly, between the two states. So when it comes to the cost of living, Montana is actually 8% higher than the national average, whereas Wyoming is 6% less than the national average in terms of cost of living. And the difference in that cost of living actually comes from the housing costs. So as I'm sure you can imagine, a lot of people have moved into Montana over the years, much like people have moved into Idaho and Wyoming, and that has caused housing prices to increase dramatically. Now, Wyoming has seen increases in prices, but not nearly as dramatic as Montana and Idaho. But that being said, their housing costs are, I think I read like 20 or 25% more expensive than Wyoming, so it's pretty significant. So that is one of the major differences already in terms of cost of living. Now, in terms of taxes, Wyoming does not have a state income tax. I've talked about that plenty of times, which means that we also don't have any state income tax on your retirement income, and that makes Wyoming extremely desirable for individuals and for businesses. Now, Wyoming does have a sales tax, and that sales tax is around 4%, but keep in mind that individual counties and cities may have adders onto that. So the sales tax in Wyoming can vary, and it may vary as much as like 1 to 2%. I know in Casper right now our sales tax is at 6%, so keep that in mind. Montana does not have a sales tax, which is super helpful if you are making a large purchase, but Montana does have a state income tax, and from the tables that I can find online, the income tax in Montana can range anywhere from 1% to 6.75% depending on what your total earnings are for the year. So you kind of have to balance those two out between what's most important to you, an income tax versus a sales tax. So that's one of the major things to consider. Another item when we're talking about taxes to consider is property taxes. So Wyoming assesses your homes at 9.5%, then you have the mill levies that are added, and that effectively brings our property tax rate to around 0.6%. When you look at Montana, Montana assesses your homes at 1.34%, and then again you add the mills onto that, and that makes the effective tax rate in Montana around 0.79%. The major difference there is that the mill levies that are applied are much larger in Montana versus Wyoming. So the average mill levies that are applied to your property tax bill in Wyoming are around 70 mills. Again, give or take depending on county and city. But in Montana, when I was looking at the averages there, it's as much as 500 mills. So that's where, even though the assessment percentage is less in Montana, when you add those additional mills, it can increase your property tax bill. So for example, if you were to take a $300,000 home in Wyoming with a 9.5% rate assessment, with those 70 mills, you apply that together, you might be looking at a property tax bill of around $1,995 per year. Whereas if you take that same $300,000 home and apply the 1.35% property tax rate assessment, multiply that by 500 mills, your property tax bill is going to be closer to $2,025. So keep that in mind when you're comparing the two. Now, I will also note that both Montana and Wyoming did enact some property tax relief bills this year. Montana enacted a property tax bill that is actually going to shift the burden of the property taxes, not entirely, but it's going to create a reduction for those that own their primary residence in Montana. They're going to be shifting the burden of the property taxes, the majority of them, over to those that own second homes in Montana or say Airbnb rentals. So it's projected to reduce property tax bills in Montana by around 18%. Now, Wyoming did also enact property tax reduction relief plans in 2025, one of which is a 25% property tax reduction for the next 2 years for homes valued at under $1 million. They did also enact a 4% cap on property tax increases. So that is going to be super helpful for all homeowners, I think, between both states, Montana and Wyoming, in terms of how they are really trying to help those of us who have seen our property taxes increase. And I'm not excluded from that. I saw that for sure in 2023. So anyways, that's something to consider as well. Now, let's talk about the economies. So Montana's economy is pretty diversified. They rely heavily on agriculture. Forestry remains a staple. They also have an emphasis on technology and tourism, whereas Wyoming, which is also actually pretty diversified, our state's economy leans heavily on mineral extraction, oil, energy, natural gas, government positions, and we are also starting to see an increase in education, healthcare, and tourism as well. So that's kind of the difference between the two economies of the states. And I would say the final item to consider between both Montana and Wyoming are really going to be population. So Wyoming is the least populated state. As of 2024, our population was 587,000. Woohoo! Whereas Montana's was 1.14 million, so they're almost double what we have in Wyoming. So if you are really not a huge people person, I guess, then Wyoming might be a better fit for you. If you prefer to be surrounded by more people, but not a ton, then maybe Montana is better for you. But I will say this, one tidbit that I thought was interesting when I was researching between the two states is, as much as Wyoming is known for being the windiest state, it actually isn't for 2025, believe it or not. Montana and South Dakota are actually the windiest states based upon tracking wind speed for 2025. So if you are grumbling about the thought of moving to Wyoming because of the wind, well, guess what? It's actually worse in Montana and South Dakota. So yeah, that might be considered a win for you if you're looking at Wyoming. I know it's a win for me living in Wyoming, so I'm happy about that. Although I wish we just didn't have nearly as much wind in general, but you know, you gotta take the good with the bad, right? But anyways, you know, the big takeaway that I want to share with you in this video is that ultimately, whether you are looking at moving to Montana or Wyoming, that really just comes down to personal preference and what your anchor is for moving out into the Rocky Mountain region, whether it be a job, whether it be family, whether it be lifestyle, a new chapter, whatever it may be. You kind of have to figure out what's most important to you and where you need to be based upon that anchor, and then see if everything else aligns with it between the two states. And just know that even if you're not looking at moving to Wyoming, I work with agents all across the US. So if you are looking for somebody that aligns more with my style and how I operate business, feel free to reach out. I would love to get you connected with an agent that can help you in Montana or really any other state, to be quite honest with you. And if you are looking to relocate to Wyoming, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am a transplant myself from California, no less. So I have literally been in your shoes. I have walked this walk and I know how stressful it can be. And it is my goal to help make this move a little less stressful for you. So that way when you get here, you feel good and you're ready to just get plugged in. So please don't hesitate to reach out when the time is right. Feel free to call, text, or email me. I'm a local realtor in the Casper area, but I can get you connected with an agent anywhere else within the state of Wyoming or anywhere else within the country. Also, I want to do a shameless plug for my relocation guide. I have a free relocation guide that I offer to anyone who is interested. I will put the link below. That relocation guide is so helpful if you are looking to move to the Casper area. It gives you information on our economy, on education, on places to visit if you're just gonna do a discovery trip. So either way, if you're thinking about Casper, that relocation guide is also super helpful. So make sure that you check out the link below. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this video and just say that I hope that you guys got some value out of it. I know that moving to the Rocky Mountain region as a whole is probably a little overwhelming and scary, especially if you're coming from the West Coast like I did. But I promise you, we will make this one your best one yet when it comes to moves. So with that, please take care, and I will see you in the next one.